All right, folks, I'm back. This is not a joke. This is actually the the map briefing for Outskirts. I know to some it is a big open field, and for the most part, it is a big open field. So I expect and hope that this video will be short, but it's also probably the Conquest map I've played more than any others. Played in pubs, played in organized, and there are a few things that I think are worth saying about it. So I'll say those things, and then I'll let this be a short video. But I don't know. I feel like this one is kind of growing on me, but it can feel like a grind. It can kind of almost have that pry forward sense, in that there's a lot of artillery. It has good shots, and because it's open, there is cover and concealment, but not as much as others. And for those who are used to maybe using surprise and dang flanks and all the rest, this map is going to sorely disappoint you. It's going to be far more about fundamentals, using the few defilades that are there, using movement, and basically just hitting your shots. So without any further ado, let's do it. I believe we are at about where the CSA spawn. I've played this with swapped sides before, and so I believe this is where the CSA starts. More often than not, as CSA I start over here, and as the Union I start up there. We just played this one. In a straight-on sprint foot race, the Union makes it to point B, coming out of those tents before the CSA does. So that's just the way it is. This is a map where the 3 points, you can see they are on a line, and they end, yes, in the outskirts. And they begin, or however you want to think about it, in the readout from the skirmish map that is readout. CSA Arty, I believe, spawns here. Union Arty, so that's between points B and C. Union Arty is over there. I think everybody knows this, but if you don't know, this is also a map where there's kind of a third battery, and assuming that the CSA gets to C before the Union does, this can be a very difficult point for the Union to attack if the CSA get in here, because there are guns, those are guns, and there's a lot of them, and you can put canister in them, and you can point them right down the way. You know the Union's either going to hug the berm. Now you can't, I don't know, I went down the whole length of this thing, and I was always timing out, so you can like run maybe on it or next to it, but you can't run on the other side of it for very long. And so you know the Union, if they're going to come this way, they're going to come over from this V. And so you could set up a couple guns with double canister. You could have a half dozen guys who know what they're doing in artillery, and they could probably create a limited caisson wall, and they could just have canister and then maybe run one or two guns without canister. And they could force the Union to lose a lot of tickets if they're going to attack this head on. And there really isn't a great approach to attacking other than head on. The cabin is in bounds, but again, Union spawn is over there. The points are over here. If they're able to make it over there, there's probably other things that they ought to be doing rather than rushing this. But anyways, that is that. It's got the fixed caissons around it, and so that tends to make it more defensible for friendly infantry. So the combination of artillery, terrain, and the fixed caissons means that probably a relatively small number of CSA defenders could hold this against a larger number of Union attackers, or at least really make them bleed for that point. So that's that. Again, I think everybody knows about that kind of third battery, but there it is. I found this one to be close, right? Even on swapped sides, and I think when I played as the Union most recent, we also spawned where I think the CSA normally does. Obviously, this one is one where point B is the pivot point. Sometimes these are more set up in a triangle, and so I'll talk about the pairs. But instead of looking at these like down a line, like looking from C to A, think about how you might go about attacking or defending point pairs. Because the name of the game in Conquest is controlling one more point than the other. And so the easiest way to ensure that is to make sure that you hold 2 points, and at most the other side will have one. If you do that, more than remaining in formation and other things, you will win that round. Unless the rest of your team is fighting out of line or something like that. But so you want to think about how could you cut off 2 points, more or less give up on a third, and from there defend things. To me, it's easier answered from the team that has to spawn up here in the tents. If I'm spawning up here, there are only 2 points I want to play, and it's A and B. And it's not more than, I do not want to play C point, for the aforementioned reason. I mean, who knows what RD is going to be, but the canister I still find is pretty good. And just the opening, the time it takes to get there, the amount of shooting that's probably going to go into you. If the CSA is playing this well, assuming that they spawn down there, they're going to probably have infantry in front of, they're already protecting it, but also infantry that's going to flex to either B or C. They're going to shoot you in the side the whole way up. It's just going to be a miserable time. And you have to take a lot of force there to make up for the amount of shots and the casualties you're going to take from those shots. And so while you're taking manpower away from B and or A over to C, I think it ends up being a losing endeavor. So if I'm spawning up in the tents, I might want to do other things, but I really want to defend B and A. A is not as defensible as I think it looks. It tends to be defensible, I think, because it's on the extreme end. I don't like these maps where the points are all in a line. I think that the triangle or some other shape other than a quasi line is better suited to this game mode. First of all, those points always tend to be on the ends of maps. I mean, that's true in triangles as well. But folks don't want to go to the very extreme because they know they're pulling manpower away from at least one other point and possibly the second one. But the reason why I say that this is not as defensible as you think is that, and it looks like it should be, right? Because you have fencing and overlooks an open field. The shrubs here, though, block your ability to shoot through this fence, right? You're not timing out here, but you can't really see or shoot anything. Now, these houses are the landmark of where you can't go without timing out. And so neither side really has an avenue. I haven't timed this, but you can't go deep into the town and then push down this way. And so if you're the defenders who are sitting back here, you either have to sit kind of up on this defilade and the rocks and the shrubs, something like that, but you can't get a lot of men there. You only get a limited amount. This is a little opening we'll come back to. You can sit down here, but then the hill blocks your view. And so as the group, whoever it is that's approaching from this direction, you really got to worry more about the folks who are out here, artillery and stuff like that, and then you're probably either going to make a push that way or you're just going to come up and over and try to win it quick. This point, the Union, I think, always gets there first, or whoever spawns up in the tents will get there first, but it's far more appealing to defend this point from folks who are coming from that direction than that direction for the reasons I just mentioned. You can, of course, try to defend it, and you can defend it from the backside. Right, so you cap A and then you put folks on the backside of this. But again, now you're up against the map boundary, and so we're about to find it. I was going to say that this is embarrassing, but not that embarrassing. You can go a little ways into the woods, but again, if you're pressed up against the map boundary, people can count flags, and if you're missing, they're going to know it, and you're so far away from the action. If the Unions embedded themselves in here from the tents, they know that you got two ways of coming to get them. One is to come through there. You can also swing around here probably without timing out, but you're going to end up back on those fences. And then whoever is defending from this backside can use the first line of fences, the second line of fences, even the third line of fences to defend that backside. Down here, if you are defending on the backside, you're going to have a very short window of time to shoot, and that's when people crest that hill. So you got to be on it. If you have too many defenders back here, then you don't have enough to defend the other points. So anyways, that's like an overthinking point A. It looks like it should be defensible, and it is. But I think a lot of reasons why it's more defensible than it should be is because groups just don't want to send maximum manpower and go all in on a point when they're in a straight line, because they know that B is the kind of pivot point of the map. So that's point A. Point B, again, the group coming out of the tents should always get there first as long as they go directly to it. And then whoever gets here, you kind of got to take a look and see what weapons are available to both sides. If you have the range advantage, right, just like in boxing, then you throw from the outside. If you got 42s, then you go ahead and you want to make it, eventually you want to make this a close fight. But you can defend this point, from the backside. That is, you can cap it, and then you can stand off behind it and shoot. There's not all that much to be gotten, right? You got some stuff here, a little bit here and there, concealment cover. There is a defilade down there of some note, but actually coming down the hill means that you don't usually have much of a defilade to hide behind if you're coming out through the tents. But you're probably willing to put a fair amount of manpower out. Maybe this is a little far back, but probably up and around here, and maybe use those. They're not sawhorses, but I'll call them sawhorses, and then maybe anchor that position of the tree. You're close enough that you could flex to A if you saw a big push that way, but those are probably going to be the 2 points that you wanna try to play off of. That way, if you're far enough back, you're still going to get smacked from that position. There's just not too much you can do. But holding B and A coming from the tents, and this being your battery, means that those guns can find point A very easily. And I can certainly tell you from playing infantry, it is very easy for those guns to find just about any target out in that field, as long as they are competently manned. So I think that's where you make your stand, and I wouldn't put too much into fronting. And the same is true in reverse for the side that comes from over here. You're probably not going to win B. And so you got some choices as to what you want to do. You can either go to C and kind of do like it's not much of a split push, but if the tent group isn't going to contest it, you can send a minimal group up there, cap it, and then bring them down. And then you can kind of have 2 groups, if you have 4 flags, that might threaten either A or B. And then you would have 1 or 2 groups, and assuming you have 4, probably 2 groups, that would be over here, and they'd be defending C and threatening to push to B as time permits. And I would assume in that position that the tent group is going to try to mirror that move. When we played this most recently as a CSA, we lost the initial foot race. We lost point A, but we got point C. And somehow, even though we had a lot of 42s, we actually won the range fight. And I think we brought more folks to this than we thought. What if you try for a bookend approach? That is, if you are, say, the CSA or whatever group is funding here, and you know you're not going to go for point B, you send 2 groups to C, and then you send 2 groups maybe out to here. That might make it look like, right? You're almost demonstrating that you're going to go to B, but instead you're really going to end up making a full push to A as fast as you can. If you do that, and I think that on these straight line maps, it's not as terrible as it sounds, but I think it's going to be harder to execute than it is to theorize. And what I'm doing here is the theory. If you go with the bookends and you get A and C against B, and that's how you're going to hold, your comms have to be really good. Particularly if that's not your battery, you have to wipe it, and it's going to be hard to hold. You're probably just going to be eating a lot of arty unless you're willing to go through there, or you get a bunch of folks in there and take some arty guys within. You make that your battery. But what can happen is the tent group that has 4 companies might push 4 against 2 or 3 against 2 and then hold 1 against your other 2. And so whatever the unengaged or the not targets of the big push are, they have to constantly be putting pressure on the midpoint. So if you went with the bookend approach, you'd actually probably want to be up in these guns as much as you could be, and you want to make it look like you're going to move to point B. Again, you can play it a little bit defensive, but you're going to take far more tickets from holding the ground than you're going to lose in any sort of shootout, even if the other side has you outranged. And similarly, the group that is up in C can't hold up in C. You have to come down and credibly threaten to cap point B, because if you're sitting back up in those fixed caissons or up here, what the group in the probably from the tents is going to do is they're going to look like they're defending between B and A, and they're going to take a bunch of the defenders on B, they're going to sweep to A, they're going to quickly knock it off, cap it for themselves, and then they're going to have everybody kind of turned and facing the group that you have in C. So I think it's the hardest to do in organized play and in pub play, particularly because at least a lot of the organized events I'm in, we don't use Steam chat or anything else like that. It's in-game comms, and a lot of times you can't use chat or anything like that. So you really got to pay attention to what's going on, and that's why I think this is one of those where B really is critical. Both sides have a chance to get there. I mentioned I was going to talk about the defilade that this group has, so you kind of go up and over the road, and this bush is the marker that you're about to pass that defilade, but it's not that far to the point from here. And so for the group that's back here, I'm not a fan of crest firing, but kneeling to reload aiming, rising, firing, and back down. Eventually, you got to creep up because you got to make sure that shooting is accurate enough. But you can whittle the other side down if you're throwing enough lead at them. And that's another reason why you want to have, if you go the bookend approach or you just go with a 2 points next to each other and press the other, you want to as many groups as engaged as possible. If the other side has companies that are out defending stuff that's not engaged, they've basically removed that company from the game so long as they're unengaged. You don't want that. You want your companies to be actively engaged all the time so that you have a chance to win shootouts. On this one, it's really fun to watch from the eye in the sky angle. You'll watch groups as they try to bend and flank the other side, and a lot of times they're successful, or they're at least successful insofar. I think that that's harder to do with the group that's coming out from the tents, because if you're trying to bend and flank this group, if this group has B, they're going to be able to use these defilades or the backside fence to give them an advantage from the group that's coming down from the tents. So again, I didn't want this one to go long. Inevitably, somehow I managed to talk about this map for 16 minutes. My goodness, the things I can talk about. But that is going to be it for Outskirts. Yeah, if you like shooting, if you like artillery, this is a map you ought to like. And it's Conquest, so it's already the best mode in the game.